It's time to meet Clifton with your host, Ray Grabowski.
Here's Ray.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone and welcome to Meet Clifton, where the people of our community matter the most. I'm Ray and beside me is my co-host, George Silva. How you doing?
Ray.
Looking forward to a good summer.
I'm looking forward to it, yes.
Well, that's good because I think everyone else is. Well, we have a fantastic show for you all. So without further ado, the Two Tones will play us a song and we'll introduce our first guest. Don't go away.
Change, change, change.
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 Ray's guests for tonight's episode: Passaic County Surrogate Court Judge Bernice Toledo, liver transplant surgeon Andrew delaTorre, and local children's music teacher Kim Latiano, with more music by the Two Tones. All this and more on Meet Clifton.
You treated me mean. Oh yeah, you treated me fool. Change, change, change. Change, fool.
Okay, welcome to the 22nd episode of Meet Clifton. Tonight our first guest does the job that one might think is impossible. She acts as the voice for those who cannot help themselves, such as the deceased, incapacitated, or orphan children. Here to explain more about her position is Passaic County Surrogate Court Judge Bernice Toledo.
Welcome. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you so much. Good to see you.
Okay, with us tonight we have Bernice Toledo, and she's the Passaic County Surrogate Court Judge. And a lot of us probably don't even know what that means, so she'll explain it to us. Basically, what is a surrogate court judge?
A surrogate court judge is one who acts for another. And you said it earlier. You said the deceased, the incapacitated, and the orphan child. So a surrogate, like the word that we often hear when we're talking about a pregnant mom, right? She's having babies for someone who cannot.
Right.
I don't have anybody's babies. I had two and I'm done with that. But what I do is I empower those, usually next of kin, so that they can make legal decisions for someone who cannot. And who's that? That's the person who's passed away. That's the child who has a legal voice, but it has not yet turned 18.
Right.
And the incapacitated person. Think of grandma with Alzheimer's.
Okay, and we call you a judge. Now, most judges, they're appointed or elected, and so you're not appointed.
No, I'm not appointed.
Okay.
Most judges are appointed. I'm elected. And the
Okay.
reason for that is because of the very nature of my position. So when you go to the municipal court to pay your parking ticket, for
Right.
example, you see the municipal court judge. He was appointed by a mayor
Okay.
that you voted for, right?
Right.
Or not?
Yes.
When you go to the state court, let's say to do jury duty, that judge was appointed by the governor for whom you had the opportunity to vote, right?
Right.
The people who I serve don't have the opportunity to vote, so we're not going to let
I see.
one person, one guy, decide who's going to give a voice to the voiceless. We're going to let the people who love them and care for them do it. So the mom who has the developmentally disabled adult Down syndrome child,
Right.
well, she's going to vote for who she thinks should be the
Okay.
surrogate court judge. Or the spouse of the deceased person, they're going to vote.
So it's basically the people's choice.
It's the people's choice because the people who you serve cannot vote.
Okay, so now I could break this down a little bit. Specifically, as it relates to children, what do you do?
As it relates to children, I do two things.
Okay.
Number one is I handle all the adoption filings for orphan children in Passaic County. So every single adoption that happens in Passaic County goes straight through the Passaic County Surrogates Court. There's only one stop in every county. And I do another thing also, which is I hold funds for minors who either inherit money or receive a civil award. So when a child inherits money from grandmother or gets a lawsuit for $50,000, we want to make sure that that money's still going to be there when they turn 18.
Absolutely.
So it's held in trust in my surrogates court, and when they turn 18, I hand it over. It's mostly they're subject to petition. So if a child is going to graduate high school, they have $50,000 there, but they don't have enough money for prom and graduation costs, well, they can make a petition and it could be approved. If they make an application for something frivolous, like, you know, a designer bag, it will not be approved. That's exactly the reason why the surrogate court judge holds the money, to make sure it's safe.
Okay, so you're sort of like their bodyguard of their money, in essence.
Correct.
Yeah.
Protecting the money from being
Protecting.
taken by other people, by the adults in their lives, essentially.
Absolutely, because some people are like that. Now, incapacitated adults, in what capacity do you work with that?
So when I mentioned earlier a grandmother with Alzheimer's or a person with developmental disability, once the developmentally disabled turn 18, they could, unless adjudicated, that means unless you go
Right.
before the court, they could make a legal decision. So imagine a person who's high functioning autistic. Physically, you can't tell that they're incapacitated. It doesn't matter if mom goes into the hospital and says, no, he needs that treatment, he
Right.
has to get it, forget about his refusal. If there's no adjudication of incapacitation, the doctor will follow what he has said. So you make the application so that you, let's say as the mother of the
Right.
developmentally disabled or the child, the adult child of the person with Alzheimer's, so that you can make legal decisions for them, manage their affairs.
Okay, so that's very important. And I think not the most important one, but the most one that people think of mostly is the deceased.
Well, sure. I mean, it's
So-
the bulk of what I do.
Right, so just explain that a little bit, because that's going to be important to most of the people watching.
Sure. Well, what I do with respect to the deceased is twofold. Somebody passes away, and their ability to make legal decisions is gone,
Right,
but guess what's not gone? Their house isn't gone, their car isn't gone, their bank account isn't gone. So who takes care of that? I have to appoint somebody to serve in the capacity.
right,
So, for example, if there is a will, I just look at the will on its face. If it meets the statutory requirements, the legal requirements of what a will is, it gets admitted to probate. I basically authorize that person. I give them my, in layman's term, my blessing in the form of a letter testamentary or a surrogate certificate. I give them my blessing, so now they are standing in the shoes of the person
Right.
who passed away.
okay. And I think my co-host George has a question that might be relevant to this.
Yes, George,
What
your
happens
question.
if we don't have a will?
If you don't have a will, everything is not lost. A lot of people think that if there's no will, you have no business in the surrogate's court because there's nothing you can do.
Right.
That's not true. If you have no will, what you can do is you make an application to the court to seek an appointment. Now, if it's just, let's say mom has 5 children. And this is the importance of having a will, because mom has 5 children. Child number 1, adult child, makes the application to be the administrator, right? And child number 2, you have to get consent of all the equally entitled, equally positioned. So child number 2 consents, and child number 3 consents, and 4 consents. What do you think happens to child number 5?
Doesn't want to go.
They object. Child number 5 always objects. So at that point, what happens is, if they object, then I hold a hearing, and I hear testimony, I consider proofs, and then I make a determination and enter an order appointing somebody, they're called an administrator in that sense, to serve on behalf of the person who passed
So
away.
it's very important to have a will.
It's important to have a will because I can tell you, for a variety of reasons. If there's no will, you cause a lot of family strife, a lot of uncertainty
Without a doubt.
that really shouldn't happen. And at hearings, you'd be surprised how many times at hearings I say to them, listen, I didn't need to hear all this dirty laundry. A lot of times people just want to be heard. And they say, well, why do you want to be served? When I was taking care of mom and feeding her and dressing her, you were off in Europe getting boyfriends. And really, it's really not about serving or the surrogate's court. It's more about wanting to be heard, and they're very sentimental, and they're overwrought emotionally. So that's what tends to happen.
Okay.
You can avoid that. You can avoid splitting up Thanksgiving dinner into eternity.
Yeah,
if you have a will. Plus, plus there's other things too. If you have a complicated family, a blended family, it's possible that a person who, when you have a non-marital child, or you each came into the marriage like the Brady Bunch,
Okay.
it's possible, depending on who dies first, that the children of the latter dying person could get stuck with a lot less than they would have. So you have to have things in place, especially if you have a blended family, a non-traditional family, and if you want to save Thanksgiving dinner.
Okay.
See, so
Thank you.
George, I think what we're trying to say here is it's important to get your house in order,
Yes.
so that you don't leave a headache or a hardship to
Correct.
the people that come after you. You're actually doing them a favor by having a will set up.
Sure, sure.
We have so much information. It was really good. We'd like to thank Bernice for coming on.
Thank you.
If there's ever any questions, please contact her in Passaic County.
Yes.
We appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Thank
the
you.
show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
My babe don't stand no cheating, my babe. My babe don't stand no cheating, my babe. My babe, she don't stand no cheating. She don't like none of that midnight creeping, my babe. True little baby, that's my babe.
Okay, that was another great song by the Two Tones. Thank you, guys. Now, sometimes when we get ill and we need to go to a hospital, it's good to know that our lives are put in the hands of highly skilled surgeons. Sometimes having a bit of their expertise can put us at ease. So with a Johns Hopkins medical degree and having served on the staff of Rutgers University Liver Transplant Program and serving as the Director of Liver Surgery and Cancer Care at St. Joseph's Medical Center, our next guest is certainly one of those professionals who could save your life. Please welcome Andrew delaTorre, doctor.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate it. Okay, Dr. delaTorre. We're going to talk a little bit about the liver, I guess, because that's, I guess, your avenue of expertise. So how common is liver disease in our community?
Well, liver disease is one of these diseases that goes unnoticed until it's usually too late. But if you look at who has liver disease, I mean, just to give you an example, if you're a man or a woman between the ages of 45 and 54, the cause of death, liver disease is the fourth leading cause of death in that population. And if you're older than 54 or 65, it's either number 5 or 6.
Wow.
So it's actually fairly common,
Right.
but we don't recognize that. And that's kind of that's probably the biggest problem. It goes unrecognized far too often.
Right. What are the, I guess I could say, what are the most common types of liver disease?
Well, there's preventable and non-preventable. The most common type right now is probably from hepatitis C. It's a viral infection that attacks the liver. And second to that is fatty liver disease, because we have an obesity epidemic. And if you have too much fat in your body, it accumulates in your liver, and that can cause scar tissue and what we call cirrhosis, which is advanced liver damage. And then there's hepatitis B, and then there's
Which is
alcoholic liver disease, which is sort of like 3 or 4. And then there's a lot of genetic ones that are far less common. But the big ticket liver disease are hep C, fatty liver disease,
Right.
and hepatitis B, and then alcohol.
Now, if we could stay on hep C just for a minute, because
Sure.
I know there's a lot of advertising, there's a lot of information and literature about hep C all of a sudden in the news.
Right.
And that's because I'm under the assumption that it was incurable at one point, and now there's an answer for this?
There are far more effective and tolerable treatments today for hepatitis C. So the average person who we find that is treatable, probably 9 out of 10 will get rid of the virus from their body.
Right.
So that's, comparing, like when I started taking care of liver disease probably 20 years ago, that number was far lower. It's like maybe 1 in 3, 1 in 5 would be able to get cured with the treatments we used. Back then it was interferon. Now we have multiple treatments. They're pill form with far less toxicity. They're much better tolerated.
Because I was reading something about there's a pill you take for 3 months, and
Yep.
supposedly, is that curable?
9 out of 10 people are curable. And now that we've made such really amazing advances, there are at least 4 or 5 different types of pill form treatments that will cure you at 90% of the time.
Because I know there's a big push, especially by the state of New Jersey, to get tested. But if you don't go for a blood test, is there any symptoms that you would know that you have it? Because
most people are diagnosed incidentally. You go for a unrelated procedure, a foot surgery,
Right.
they draw some blood work and your liver functions are abnormal. And actually, unfortunately, even then, a lot of people are not tested. The government has guidelines, so the guidelines now, which are the easiest ones to use, is if you were born before 1945 or between 1945 and 65, or quote, a baby boomer, that the government dictates that or says that you should have a one-time test, at least a one-time
Right.
test. And even though the government says that what they call the U.S. Preventive Task Force or U.S. Preventive Health Task Force, unfortunately, it still doesn't happen as much as it should.
Right.
So at St. Joe's, we have a unique program where that we automatically test people in our system if they're born between those years. And we have what they call a patient navigator who gets them into treatment.
Right.
And we see a lot of people that otherwise would not have been tested.
Now, Hep C, since we're talking about, is it, I don't want to use the word contagious, but is it communicated from one person to the next?
Hep C is mostly blood transmitted.
Blood transmitted?
Yeah. Hep B is not. Hep B is actually what you call it classifies as a sexually transmitted disease. You can get through sex.
Right.
But C, no. C is basically blood transfusion, IV drug use back in the, I guess the 70s, dialysis patients when they're getting a lot of
Right.
blood products. But it's mostly it's blood transmitted.
And so what would be the complications if you have liver disease?
Well, the big complication that we see is well, liver cancer and what we call cirrhosis and liver failure. So if you look at cancers in our country at this point in time, most cancers, in terms of new cases of cancer, or the incidence has leveled off. Liver cancer is one of the only cancers that's actually increasing over time. So it's a big problem because we tend to diagnose it way too late when it's,
Right.
quote, late stage disease. And unfortunately, if you're diagnosed at that point, you're not curable. And it's a very expensive cancer to treat. So that's the big problem we face. So really, it all begins with early testing.
Right.
If you have somebody who's a baby boomer, boom, test them.
Yeah, of course.
But sometimes, you have patients who, listen, if you look at the government statistics, what they call the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, if you were born in the baby boomer era, 5% of people used IV drugs, whether it be one time, and it's just something that we did back then. Yeah. But because of that, there's a higher rate of Hep C in the baby boomer population.
So is there any way is prevention
at this point,
at this stage?
At this point, well, actually,
some education.
Education is really important. But as you may know, there's an opioid epidemic that we're going through.
Yes.
And now what we're seeing is more people using IV drugs again.
Right.
So actually, if you look at the number of people who are getting infected with new cases of Hep C, it went down for many years, but now it's starting to go back up again. And it's mostly because of this opioid epidemic. And as you know, there's prescription drug, and then they can't get the prescription drug. Then they're going back on the streets, and they're using needles. And now those people, because it's blood transmission, you're getting a blip in the number of new cases of what they call acute hepatitis C.
So certainly by leading a clean life is prevention right there, hopefully.
Yeah, of course.
That's because there's no other way. And I think the last question is, can a patient be cured with liver disease?
Well, again, it depends on the disease. It depends on when you were diagnosed or when we found you. I mean, as a former liver transplant surgeon, we transplanted scores of people for even liver cancer or liver failure. But again, back then, those days, most of what we were transplanting were people with hepatitis C, and the treatments were really poor. Right. So that was a big problem. Now things have gotten better. So if you get a transplant and you have hepatitis C, there are far better treatments, and those people do much better. Okay,
so there's positive hope now. Liver disease and cancer is a serious situation in this country, and as you say, as of late, hopefully there's more information out there, and like a doctor here takes care of things. We'd like to thank you for coming on. Hopefully we learned a lot about this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat.
Hi everyone, happy summer. And on that note, we're going to have, with conjunction with the Theater League of Clifton, a poolside fundraiser on June 29th. That's at 15 East Parkway. So if you'd like to RSVP, please do so at 973-432-0705. They're going to have hors d'oeuvres and drinks. And please consider doing a donation with them. Then on July 8th, Saturday, it will be the tag sale fundraiser for the Art Center of Clifton, and that's in conjunction with the Citywide Garage Sale. So please consider going to the Senior Barn from 3:30 p.m. until 5 p.m., and that is on July 8th.
Hi everyone. The New Jersey Knights of Columbus will be having the 8th annual Army Tank Pull. That will be on Sunday, June 25th. For more information, you can visit www.tankpullofc.org. Also, the City Picnic and Fireworks will be on July 4th For more information, you can call Mayor Anzaldi's office, 973-470-5757. And last but not least, City Greens Veggie Mobile is back this summer, and they will be at Clifton City Hall every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So be sure to stop by.
Thank you. We'll see you at all the events.
Thank you so much for those updates. Remind you that these groups support such great causes, so we encourage you to join them for their events if you can. Now, George, let me ask you a few questions. Have you ever had music lessons as a kid?
No, but I think I should have.
Okay, no guitar, no nothing.
No, nothing.
Well, since many kids take music lessons, their minds really develop more than they ever realize. Here to tell us more is a local music instructor, Miss Kim Latiano. Let's welcome her.
Thanks so much for coming
George,
by.
how are you? Hi, Ray. Thank you.
Okay, with us tonight we have
Okay.
Kim Latiano. She's a director and teacher of music classes for children. So, Kim, how long have you been teaching kids?
I've been teaching children for about, over 15 years now, so I'm almost close to 20. I've
Okay.
been teaching a Mommy and Me program, so for a very long time.
And that's what I wanted to say to people. You know, like when we have our kids and they're young, they're toddlers, there's all kinds of programs. There's mommy swimming with children, and then there's aerobics and calisthenics and all these things for kids. But music is really important.
Yes.
So how do kids learn in these classes?
Well, the important thing that a lot of people have to understand is from when children are born to when they're 6 years old, it's a very crucial time, especially it's a great time to put them in a music program because their pathways in their brain, they're called the neural pathways. If you're looking for scientific research, which has been proven, that's when they're working very, very rapidly, and it's very, very important. They're like sponges at this age.
Right.
So there is a saying that music learning supports all types of learning, which is very true. So when you expose children at this age, they're not only are they very open to music, they're also open to their motor skills are developing more, speech, all their senses are developing more when they're around music. When I say motor skills, for an example, let's see, George, do you know the Incy Wincy spider?
No. What are you asking me for?
Do you know the Incy Wincy? Every mommy knows the Incy Wincy spider.
Not a mommy.
Like how most of us do it, we go like this with our fingers and we sing it and we do this. Now, for a child, first of all, I have to back up and say in a lot of my classes that I teach, I have a lot of parents who say, I can't do this, Miss Kim, what are you doing? And I look at them and I say, really? Just I don't care, just put your fingers together. Children can do that and babies will learn how to do that. So this is an example of motor skills. Of course, it also goes into when they walk, when they dance, how they move to music. With their speech, children will learn to sing before they learn to talk. It's very important. We do a lot of vocables in a program that I really like and that I did with my daughter, Music Together. It's a Mommy and Me program where the parents are involved. The parents are singing and doing everything and the children are following them, so it's really very, very important.
And it's amazing. Kids learn words to all these songs, but they can't learn their homework. Yeah.
Well, but here's another thing, and I say this just from my own experience with my daughter. My daughter is now 3, and she's musical, and people will say, well, you're a musician. But I've seen from doing the program with her when she was a baby and being around music and being nurtured in a musical environment, when she got into school, she retained things very, very easily. She's an A student. She's an honors student now. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what we were just discussing, how it supports all types of learning.
Right.
So it's very important, I believe, for babies to be exposed and children, pre-K children to be exposed
and
to
I
music.
think it's also helpful to see their aptitudes. A lot of people put their kids in gymnastics or karate or dance.
Right, sure.
But music, I think you might find early on the kid might have an aptitude. Do you think all kids are musical?
I think all children are musical if they are nurtured in an environment like that. If they start from when they're young and there is music playing at home or they're in some type of a program like a music program with a Mommy and Me program, they will be able to keep what we call basic music competence, which is singing in pitch and keeping rhythm. and keeping a beat. They will be able to do it. Now, a lot of times I'll have parents in my classes who will say to me, they're not going to be able to do anything. I can't sing. Listen to me sing. They're off key all the time. And I'll say to them,
George.
George.
Yeah,
I don't
always
know, George. I'm going to have to hear you sing later. But anyway, the thing about that is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you sound like. First of all, when you come into a Mommy and Me program like what I teach, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear it because your voice is the most important to the children. But a child, just because you can't sing, doesn't mean your child's not going to be able to sing.
Right.
If they are nurtured in that environment, they will be able to do it. And if it's consistent, you know, if it's a consistent type of environment, I'm not saying just something you try once and you don't, you keep away from it, you know, that kind of a thing. So.
Yeah, and music is a universal language.
Yes, it
everyone
is.
knows it. It doesn't, you know, everybody can relate no matter what language you speak.
Yes.
Music is universal. Are there other benefits for your child of being in music class?
Well, there's
I know
a
we
lot.
talked about the motor skills, which is a
the motor
benefit.
skills is a benefit, of course, but it's also the socialization,
Right.
being around other children, being around other people, learning how to get along with other children, learning how to borrow things. When I say borrow things, when instruments come out, they come and they take an instrument, and at the end, they have to put the instrument back. And a lot of times they don't want to do that. So it takes them a little bit of time to learn that. Also sharing with other kids, learning how to deal. That's a toughie sometimes. Sometimes we have issues. But if they take an instrument from a child, usually they forget about it if you put another instrument in front of them.
Right.
So they have something else to do. You kind of distract them a little bit.
Right.
But it really is, I think mostly it's just the whole love of music that they're going to get and how much they're going to, it's a bonding time too with their parents, with their mom, with their dad. It's such a wonderful, wonderful time. I mean, I remember talking about it in my classes when I took with my daughter and I started crying. I didn't realize how emotional I was because you remember that time forever.
Right.
You remember that time. So it's a very special time.
But it's a bonding experience.
It's a very bonding
there are
experience.
schools, I think, in New Jersey that
Yes.
have this type of thing.
Yeah.
I forget the names of them, but
Yep, they'll have the program. Music Together is
Music-
big to
right.
go into the schools and do the programs in schools.
right. What are the age
So-
groups of the kids?
The age groups are anywhere from babies to 4 or 5 years old.
So a
5 years
preschool
old.
activity, right?
Preschool.
For the
Now
most
there
part.
are also classes for older kids.
Right.
That's kind of difficult because usually they're already in school 5 and 6 years old and they're doing something after school. So you want to run a class after school, but it's
Right.
kind of difficult with scheduling and everything. But we get them in there as soon as they're babies. We have baby classes. I have as little as a month and a half to 2 months in the
Really?
class. Yeah,
Good
and
singer,
it's
too.
amazing. The baby classes are amazing. It's one of my favorite classes to teach.
So
are the baby classes.
I think it's important. I mean, obviously, I play in a band and we're musical, and so does Kim. And I think it's a good thing. It's something you carry on for the rest of your life. Something like this, a classes for young children, like Kim teaches, is something that you might want to get your child involved. If you need more information on that, you could contact Kim. We'll leave a little address on the bottom. Kimmy, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me. Thank you, George.
Walked through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail. The band was jumping and the jump began to swing. You should have heard the knocked out jailbird sing. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the whole cell block was dancing to the jailhouse rock.
Okay, Meet Clifton is done for tonight, but there's so much more on the way coming soon. We gained a lot of new information tonight, and that is thanks to our guests, Bernice Toledo, Dr. Angela delaTorre, and Kim Latiano. Thanks, as always, to my co-host, George Silva, to Two Tones Orchestra, and of course, the cast and crew for making this show work behind the scenes. As always, until next time, be good to your friends and family, respect your neighbors, keep Clifton close to your heart. This is a great city. Thank you, God bless, and good night.